The restaurant La Gastronomica, in the heart of Madrid, was a sanctuary of haute cuisine and the silent elite. On a cold November evening, the main dining room was quieter than usual, as if something invisible lingered in the air. At a window table, under a hanging amber lamp, sat Doña Leticia Serrano, 78 years old, widow of an influential banker and heiress to an ancient fortune tied to the vineyards of Rioja and the forgotten mines of Andalusia. She wore an impeccable ivory suit, pearl earrings, and a white gold ring with a rare ruby, a family heirloom passed down from mother to daughter for 5 generations. Her eyes, however, betrayed more than wealth. There was loneliness there, a kind of silence even the waiters dared not interrupt. The young waitress on duty that night, Clara, was 23 years old, with eyes that hadn't learned to hide what they felt. She wore the black uniform with a white apron and a discreet headband that kept her curls in place. Clara didn't know the names of the illustrious clients she served. She simply followed the rules: discretion, silence, efficiency. But something about that elderly woman stirred an unease in Clara that she couldn't explain. It was the way she touched the ring with trembling fingers, as if that ruby were telling a forgotten story. Approaching with the menu, Clara hesitated. She didn't know why. Her voice caught before coming out, but she managed to say almost in a whisper, "Excuse me, madam, I don't mean to be indiscreet, but my mother has a ring exactly like that one." Doña Leticia raised her gaze slowly, as if hearing the echo of something unsaid for decades. "What did you say, girl?" Her voice was firm, but there was a tremor in it that seemed to blend surprise and disbelief. "The ring," Clara pointed, feeling her heart race. "It's identical to the one my mother keeps in a wooden box with an inscription inside, something like 'To Rosa with all my life.'" The world seemed to stop. Leticia brought her hand to her chest. "You said Rosa?" Clara nodded slowly, confused. "Yes, Rosa Maria Ortega, my mother. She never talked much about her family. She said I was raised by her alone. I never knew my father." The silence became an abyss between them. The dining room, the cutlery, the conversations, all seemed to vanish. Leticia leaned back in her chair as if something had been torn from her. She looked at the ring on her hand, then at the young woman before her. There was a scar on Clara's arm, a subtle curve of lighter skin near her elbow. Leticia's eyes widened. She knew that mark. "That ring," she said, her voice breaking, "was custom-made. There are only 3 in the world. One is with me. The other disappeared 25 years ago with—" She stopped. The name caught in her throat. "With whom?" Clara asked, feeling the ground slip away. "With my daughter." A waiter in the background dropped a glass, and the sound of shattering crystal was like a shot in Leticia's mind. She stood with difficulty, her hands trembling. "I need to see your mother now." Clara hesitated. So many questions, so many loose pieces. "Madam, do you know my mother?" "No, but perhaps I lost her before I even knew her." Clara set down her tray, forgot protocol. She led the elderly woman to the side of the restaurant, where the quiet reception area offered a bit more privacy. There, Leticia opened her old leather purse and pulled out a faded photograph. In it, a young woman held a baby. It was the kind of image time nearly erases. Clara's eyes widened. "That's my mother, and that's me in her arms. How do you have this?" Leticia closed her eyes. The world spun. She disappeared. "Your father was my son. We didn't know. There was a fire. And then, nothing." Clara stumbled back a step. "That's impossible. My mother always said I was the result of a disappointment, that my father abandoned her." Leticia smiled, but it was a tragic smile, like someone laughing at cruel fate. "She ran away, because she thought she wasn't worthy, because she thought I wouldn't accept her. But I would have. I would have embraced her with everything I had." The tear that fell from Leticia's face seemed to hold decades. "Your father died young. In a car accident. We never had the chance to rebuild anything." Clara was trembling. "So, you're my grandmother?" Leticia only nodded. Her heart raced. Reality felt like a twisted dream. "I thought I had lost everything, and today you appear, with that ring, with that name, with that scar." Clara touched her arm. "My mother said it was from a childhood accident. A candle, a letter." Leticia closed her eyes tightly. "I wrote letters to your mother, hidden ones, and I always left a candle burning for her. It was our code, it was our hope. Clara felt her eyes burn. I don't understand any of this, but I want to. The elderly woman took her hand. Let me see her, that's all. If afterward you want to never see me again, I'll accept it. But I need to tell her I never stopped looking. Clara nodded slowly. She doesn't like surprises. Neither do I. But maybe this is the only one worth having. They stood there for long seconds, holding hands, as if the world had stepped back to make room for something greater. A story finally beginning to unfold, a past refusing to stay buried. The taxi glided through the streets of Madrid with a heavy silence. Clara stared out the window, trying to organize her thoughts. Her mother had always been a reserved woman, embittered by time, wary of easy smiles. The idea that the elegant elderly woman beside her could be her grandmother was too surreal. But the ring, the photo, the scar's story, it all aligned in a way impossible to ignore. Letitia, meanwhile, kept her gaze fixed ahead, but her mind traveled through the decades that separated her from her vanished daughter. How many times had she blamed herself for not trying harder? How many returned letters? How many birthdays passed in silence? The building was simple, 3 stories, with peeling paint and neglected flower boxes. Clara hesitated before going up. She doesn't take visitors. She barely answers the phone. Letitia gave a half smile as if she already knew. That she got from me. They reached the 2nd floor. Clara took out her keys, took a deep breath, and opened the door. The smell of old coffee and lavender filled the air. Rosa was in the kitchen, washing dishes, unaware of what awaited her. Mom, there's someone here who wants to see you. Rosa turned slowly. She was a woman with grey hair tied in a hasty bun, dark eyes marked by sleepless nights, and a constant defensive expression. When she saw Letitia, the plates slipped from her hands and shattered on the floor. For a moment, no one moved. Letitia took a step forward, her voice faltering between emotion and fear. Rosa! No! Rosa shouted, stepping back. Don't you dare say my name! Clara stood between them, stunned. Mom, what's going on? Letitia raised her hands in a gesture of peace. I came to ask for forgiveness. Rosa trembled, pointing a finger as if warding off a ghost. You don't have that right. Leaving me, making me feel like a mistake. You ran away, Letitia whispered, and never answered again. Because I thought you'd take my daughter from me, that you'd do to me what your family did to my father. The silence that fell was crueler than any shout. Letitia took a deep breath. I was a different woman, weak, proud, conditioned by a world that doesn't accept change. But you gave me a grandson, a granddaughter, and I never knew. Clara cried silently. I'm the result of all this? Rosa looked at her, devastated. You're the most beautiful thing I ever had. That's why I protected you from everything, even the truth. Letitia approached Rosa slowly. I didn't come to take anything. I just want to give you back what's yours. Memories, photos, and this ring. She took the ring off her finger and held it out. Rosa looked at it, confused. This ring belongs to your mother, my grandmother, and it was meant to be yours. I kept it, hoping one day you'd want to come back. And you knew my father had died? Letitia nodded. He died 3 months after you ran away. I blamed you, but the truth is I was the one who separated you. I told him to forget you, and he obeyed. An obedient son, who died alone. Rosa fell to her knees on the floor. My God! Clara knelt beside her, embracing her. Mom, we can still rebuild. Letitia lowered herself with difficulty and touched her daughter's shoulder. Forgive me for all the silences. Rosa cried like a child. I kept every letter, you know, even the ones I never had the courage to open. Letitia smiled through tears. I wrote more than I sent. I was afraid of your rejection. They embraced. An embrace that crossed decades, pain, unspoken words. Clara, between them, felt filled by something she never knew she lacked. A root, a belonging, a past that was no longer a burden but a bridge. Days passed. Rosa, still wary, began to open small windows into her life. She showed Letitia photos of Clara growing up. She told her about the birthdays, the simple Christmases, the struggles as a single mother. Letitia, in turn, introduced Clara to her world. Old albums, diaries, records of a time Rosa had rejected. One morning, Letitia invited them to her home in Salamanca. I have something to show you. Arriving there, Clara was struck by the old mansion, surrounded by vineyards and sculptures. In the center of the main room, on a marble pedestal, was a dark wooden box. Letitia opened it carefully. Inside were 2 letters, one addressed to Rosa, never sent, and another to Clara. "I wrote it 2 years ago, not knowing if you existed. It was just a prayer." Clara opened it and read, "If I have a granddaughter, may she know she was loved even before she was born. May she inherit what I never knew how to give, presence, tenderness, truth." Clara cried silently. "I thought my story was small, but now it feels like an epic." Letitia took her hand. "Because it is, and it's not over yet." The following week, Clara quit the restaurant. Rosa started painting again, something she'd abandoned since youth. Letitia offered part of her inheritance to fund a community gallery. "I want other stories like ours to have a place, a beginning, a new beginning." And so, from an unlikely encounter, a new story was born. Not one that erases the past, but one that redeems it. At the gallery's opening, a golden spring afternoon bathed Madrid's sky in warm, soft hues. Clara walked among the paintings with teary eyes, recognizing in each of her mother's brushstrokes the traces of a life she once thought ordinary, but now understood as extraordinary. Rosa had chosen to paint faces, faces of lonely women, children waiting, grandmothers with outstretched hands. In each canvas, a fragment of the pain that family separation left behind, but also in each work, a spark of reconciliation. Letitia, in her velvet blue wheelchair, watched everything with a mix of pride and regret. It was too late to live the past, but there was still time to cultivate the present. Her burgundy dress contrasted with her white hair, and the ring, now on Clara's finger, shone like a seal of continuity. "She has your eyes," Letitia whispered to a woman beside her, discreetly pointing at Clara. "And your strength." Rosa, on the other side of the room, heard everything. She smiled lightly. Not an easy smile, but one of those that come after a long night. The kind of smile only those who have lost everything can give when they rediscover a piece of their soul. During the event, a journalist approached Clara. "I read the story in the press release. Is it true your reconnection began with a ring?" Clara nodded. "A ring and a scar. But what truly reconnected us were words that had never been spoken." The reporter smiled. "Will there be a closing speech?" "There will," Clara replied, "but it won't just be mine." Clara walked to the small stage set up at the back of the gallery. She called her mother and grandmother to join her. The entire room fell silent. "Not long ago," Clara began, holding the microphone firmly, "I was just a waitress. I served expensive dishes to people who didn't know my name. I thought my story was short, predictable, invisible." She looked at Rosa. "But my mother was always a warrior. Even warriors get tired, though. And I never knew where she came from or why there was so much hidden pain in her eyes." Now she looked at Letitia. "And my grandmother, well, I didn't even know she existed. But she did. And she was searching for me, even if in silence, even if in the dark." She paused. "The truth is, sometimes time doesn't erase. It just sleeps. But there are stories that want to wake up. There are bonds that endure through decades." Letitia wiped away a tear. Rosa stared at the floor, unable to hide her emotion. "When I touched that ring," Clara said, "I felt it wasn't just a jewel. It was a key that opened a door my mother had closed out of fear, a door my grandmother knocked on out of pride. But today that door is open." The audience applauded, but Clara raised her hand, asking for silence. "This gallery isn't about art. It's about reconnection. It's about forgiveness. It's about what we almost lost but chose to recover." Then she handed the microphone to Rosa. "I ran away," Rosa began, her voice hoarse but steady. "I ran because I thought I was unwanted, that my love wasn't enough, that my daughter needed to be protected from the pain that devastated me. But in doing so, I deprived her of knowing who she was." She looked at Letitia. "And I ran from you too, from your silence, your absence. But today, I understand. You were hurt too, and no one ever taught you how to ask for forgiveness." She turned to the audience. "If you have a letter you never sent, send it. If you have a visit you never made, go. If you have forgiveness you never asked for, ask." Before time closes that door again. The audience gave a standing ovation. Then Letitia, with effort, asked for the microphone. Her voice was weak, but the room fell silent. "I came from a generation where pride was worth more than love, where appearances were everything, and because of that I lost my daughter. I lost my grandson. and I almost lost my granddaughter. She took a deep breath. But God gave me another chance. He let me rewrite the ending. She looked at Clara. You taught me that truth sets you free, even when it hurts. She extended her hand and called Rosa and Clara closer. The three embraced, this time not in mourning for what they'd lost, but in gratitude for what remained. The room moved, watched in silence. It was as if they were witnessing a quiet miracle, an invisible thread being sewn back together with strands of tenderness and courage. In the days that followed, the story went viral online. Thousands of people commented, "I called my mum after seeing this. I started talking to my dad again after 12 years. I took the letter that's been in my drawer since 2004 and sent it." The gallery became a space for reconciliation. People came to share their stories, to paint, to write, to start over. Clara led workshops on emotional expression. Rosa painted with more lightness. Leticia donated time, something money could never buy. In Rosa's last exhibited painting, 3 women walked through a flowery field. A young woman in a white dress, a middle-aged woman with hands marked by life, and an elderly woman with loose hair. None of them spoke, but their eyes were full of peace. In the corner of the canvas, an inscription, "For all the scars that will one day unite us." And there, under the soft glow of the gallery's lights, 3 generations rediscovered themselves, not as victims of the past, but as guardians of a new story. Because sometimes a reunion doesn't start with a plan, but with a ring, a gesture, an unexpected phrase. And you, watching this now, is there a story you need to rewrite? Is there someone you need to forgive or reconnect with? Maybe this video wasn't by chance. Maybe today is the day your ring shines again. Write in the comments, there's still time. Share this video with someone who needs healing, and subscribe to the channel for more real stories that restore what seemed lost.